Oh, boy. Corey brought up a good point. I wish I had it queued up now. We should have been playing the Jaws theme right now because, man, we got bit.
It's good thing this is clean hits after dark because it's going to be hard to bite the tongue on the profanity for this one. It's a good 40 minutes, but oh my God.
Yeah, that is embarrassing. I think one thing, I guess maybe one of the only good takeaways here is this was a San Jose team that had not won a game. They were going to have to win at some point, and you saw it at the end there. I mean, one team wanted to win and one didn't.
Yeah, I mean,
they had it in the bag.
That was my thinking going into this one. I don't like going into a game where the other team hasn't won a game in 9 games, but at the same time, we were up by 3 after 40 minutes. You just got to come out and play 20 minutes, and they didn't. This was kind of classic Coyotes, right, where they would get a lead and then they would just sit on it. But you can't. There's a John Tortorella quote of "safe as death," and that was death that game.
Yeah,
they sat back, and it was. In the closing minutes, it was 3 goals in 110 seconds, and then I think it was a minute 26 into overtime. So what's that? 4 goals in under 6 minutes, and you get 1 point, but you throw away the other point.
Yeah, and the funny, like there are moments of turtling. So if you're kind of new to hockey, I mean, I guess it's similar through most sports, but not playing with any sort of offensive pressure, taking your foot off the gas, playing real conservative, trying to trap the other team, but not every team can play that way well. And Andre Tournier doesn't coach teams to kind of play in like a trap style, if you will, or shut down at the blue line and prevent teams from being able to do any sort of zone entry and just try to force teams to dump it and then just be able to retrieve those pucks real quick. That was tough. I mean, it really felt like that was a quick way to lose a 3-goal lead.
And especially with that team too, is if you're up 4-1, that is a team you can definitely push to go 5-1, 6-1. Whereas you're playing, if it was 4-1 lead against Vegas or something, okay, maybe play a little bit more conservative, but you got to stomp on the throat of that Sharks team and get that second point. And they didn't do that.
Yep. I guess as I'm looking through the comments too, of no good takeaways, down the road, that 1 point may matter. I sure hope it doesn't. I sure hope we're well beyond needing 1 more point to make the playoffs. And we're not looking back and going, gosh, if they just held that 4-1 lead, we would have been fine. But
yeah, just seeing the comments here through Jen Aggie, was that the hockey version of prevent defense? 100%. And like we said earlier in the show, we saw the Coyotes teams get burned by that so much. And I think that's the first time we've seen that from Utah, and hopefully the last. I like a lot about Andre Tournier, but not calling a timeout until after that 3rd goal and that under 2 minute span. Maybe the timeout should have came after the 2nd goal at the latest, but you could tell they were totally discombobulated at that point. San Jose had all the momentum shots in the 3rd period. Just going to double check here. Shots in the 3rd period.
Pointed it out too. I mean,
17-3.
42. Yeah, 17-3 in the 3rd.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Letting up like 45. I think that was 45 shots to the team that's in dead last doesn't have a win. Coming off a 3-game losing skid, and you can't play 40 minutes, maybe 45 if we're generous, but and to throw away some very good performances of players after 2 periods at least. Connor Ingram looks solid. I had a tweet ready to go of a picture of a brick wall, and then he lets in the 2nd goal, so I held off on that, and then 3rd goal and the 4th goal, so that tweet never happened. But Connor Ingram was solid through 2 periods. I thought Ian Cole had his best game since the home opener. He had 7 blocked shots, and today he was 2 assists, which he's not somebody who generally gets a lot of points. 22 minutes, had a +1. He was just really solid. Maverick Lamoureux good again. Michael Kesselring still is showing that he can maybe be more than we thought he was, but at the same time, he took one of those penalties, which I believe led to one of the Sharks' goals. Mikhail Sergachev gets his first goal. Obviously, Matthias Michelli gets 2. I thought Dylan Gunther had a nice bounce back game after a bit of a slow 2 weeks. Logan Cooley looked good, but yeah, they just unraveled there in the last 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, and there are a lot of good takeaways here. I mean, if you just remove that third period, Gunther, nice bounce back, 3 shots, which is nice. I wonder how many attempts he had. I'll have to take a look at props.cash tomorrow. Really good to see Sergachev get off the schneid, if you will, and get that goal. Cooley, I thought, played really well. What I was really excited about was that top line of Keller, Cooley, Gunther stayed together and was very threatening. But more importantly is that the second line of Michelli, Hayton, Schmaltz looked very good. And obviously Michelli got awarded twice there. Was one on the power play, though?
Let me double check.
No, both were even strength. Both were assisted by Ian Cole, but I thought that line was very reminiscent of the Keller Hayton Schmaltz line. I'm a little concerned about having a true finisher on that line because both Michelli and Schmaltz are a little bit more playmakers. But don't forget, Schmaltz did have over 20 goals last season, so he can get it in the back of the net. If Hayton can continue that goal scorers touch we saw in the first couple games of the season, that we may be able to distribute 20 goal scorers across 3 lines again, and that would be huge.
Yeah. I mean, but as much as the goal scoring, I'm looking at like Connor Ingram is now letting in like 4 or 5 goals every single game. There's still too many penalties. And as we were saying in kind of a pre-show there, and losing this game, you really got to make up for it now and winning a game coming up that maybe they weren't expected to win. And they got teams like Winnipeg coming up. They got Vegas coming up. And now you really got to steal some points there. We're 2 through 10 games now. They get 10 points. So they're even 500. But, you look at, there's been some points thrown away. That Ottawa game was winnable. This game was winnable. So that's at least 3 points right there that they don't have.
Yeah. Spaceman, I do somewhat agree with this, that he shouldn't have to have that amount of shot volume against him in the first place. But again, if you remove 17 shots that happened in the third period, now you're talking about 28 shots against, which isn't too bad. And in seasons past, this team was allowing top 5, top 3 most shots against in the league. And I believe right now they are in the 20s, even though that will change after tonight. I mean, we still have kind of a small sample size, but let me pull up shot props.
I do have to agree with Spaceman's other comment of, is this where we consider a trade for defenseman? And I mean, that's a drum I've been banging since even before Dursey got hurt, because it was always kind of fishy on when John Marino was going to return, and we're down those 2. And like, what happens if we lose somebody else? I don't want to burn out Sergachev either. He's playing I think he finished with probably 27, 28 minutes tonight.
Yeah.
Maverick Lamoureux has looked good, but at the same time, who knows how long that's going to last. And he's still only 20 years old, right? He's only played 2 games in the American Hockey League. And we really the transition looked better tonight, but at the same time, they were playing San Jose. So if they were playing virtually any other team in the league, how does that look? The new line combinations looked good for at least 40 minutes. But at the same time, if they were playing another team, it's hard to evaluate. So, it'll be interesting to see what changes take place going into the next game. So the next game is, I want to say it's on Wednesday, and that's the Calgary game, I think.
Yes, and as of right now,
Calgary's played very well.
Well, they are losing to Vegas right now. Last I checked was 3-0, still 3-0 with 6 minutes left in the third. So, we may be able to catch them on kind of a downswing again. This is not a team that many thought were going to be as good as they have been early into the season. They do have a nice mix of vets and youth on that team. So there's part of me that's not terribly surprised to see them have some success. But if as a betting man, I will be willing to say that they are not going to make the playoffs and that there will be some kind of fall off here. I would wonder what Dustin Wolf's save above's expected is right now. And it's one of those situations for Calgary. Sorry, all of our Calgary fans in the Discord, by the way. I'm not trying to rip the team apart here, but, young goaltenders can have ups and downs, and it's a long season, and it'll be interesting to see how Wolf can hold up.
Yeah. I think, I mean, going into the season, nobody thought Calgary would be as good as they are. And who knows, it might just be a hot start, right? I think you see a bit of a course correction where eventually Calgary is going to fall out of it. And I mean, long term, that's probably what they want to do so they can sell off some of the pieces they have there, like Rasmus Anderson, maybe Dan Vladar, if Dustin Wolf. I mean, obviously, Dustin Wolf is going to be the starter there going forward. But if he could be a 60-game guy, then you can move out Vladar and get some more picks because everyone's always looking for goaltending going into the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed. Well, again, I think the positives, the line changes seemingly got the spark going. I agree. Mav Lamb played just under 18 minutes, which is pretty impressive for somebody who's played 3 NHL games. Sergachev, I thought, looked fantastic again. I mean, this is what a number one defenseman does. He's not going to be as flashy as McCarr. He's not going to have that type of upside, obviously. But I sure feel a hell of a lot better having him on this team, eating up minutes than what it could have been, which could have been JJ Moser still. And with no Marino, with no Jersey, I mean, I can't imagine if that trade had it happened, what some of these games would look like. But
yeah, true.
Other comments about the games, because otherwise, I don't know. I'm sipping some wine. I'm ready to talk some trade.
This was, I thought this was going to be a really interesting game because had they won, okay, things, I mean, it's still a win against San Jose.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a grain of salt, but I thought, okay, things are kind of getting back on track, fresh week, just forget about last week. And then had they lost, then, okay, that really ramps up the talk of bringing in a defenseman, especially if they had lost for defensive reasons. But now we're kind of in this weird spot where they played well for 2 periods and they still got a point, but again, the next game is going to be a lot harder because it's not going to be against San Jose. So I know had they pulled that tonight against, Vegas or any other, Winnipeg or any of the other upcoming competitions, it probably doesn't even get to overtime. They might lose 7-4.
Yeah. I'll play devil's advocate here. And what I am going to say is, had they won this game 4-1 or 4-2, they could have been overly confident going into this next batch of games, and maybe old habits came back out. Maybe they wouldn't take the Flames seriously enough, and maybe we're looking at more embarrassing losses, and maybe this will be the wake up call they need to really get the act together and start moving forward with figuring out an identity. Because right now, kind of started off as a run and gun mentality, and I don't think that's working, especially with the defensive injuries. And it sucks because I love Tournier and I want him to stick around. Obviously, it's too early to be saying he's on the hot seat or anything like that. But I don't know what ownership's loss tolerance is going to be moving forward, and at what point will he be on the hot seat? And honestly, we just haven't been able to see this team that general manager Bill Armstrong has constructed yet, because the blue line hasn't played one game yet. What he built over the summer. So
yeah, I don't think
not played one game. They've only played 3 games or 4 games with 5/6 of what he built.
I don't think Andre Tournier needs to be polishing up his resume or anything like that. Going into the year, the expectation was that they would compete for a playoff spot. And despite tonight's score, they're still only 1 point out of that. I think they are actually in a tie for the wild card spot in the West. So it's not all doom and gloom, but at the same time, we'll have a better idea of, where they are in the playoff picture in the next couple of months here. But I do think there are some. So, I mean, in terms of Tournier, if they miss the playoffs by 20 points, then maybe that's a conversation, but I don't think his job is in jeopardy until probably if they're at, not anywhere near expectations midway through next season. I think that's kind of when that talk would begin. And that sort of aligns with his contract as well, because I think he has obviously this year, but then I think he has another 2 years left on his deal after this. I think a huge point of concern, though, is this is 10 games through, and they've only got 1 regulation win. That's wild. And even if they'd won tonight in overtime, still only just the 1 regulation win through 10 games. That's
I didn't realize that.
I'm going to double check here, but
I think you're right.
Only
just
team,
the Chicago game.
Yes, the home opener. They haven't. Only other wins since have been in overtime, right? Islanders, Rangers, Boston,
and then label Mel Infinity or Melfinity in the comments. Out of 10 games, Utah has let in less than 4 goals 3 times, which
not good.
One of those was Vejmelka starting, so that's not even an Ingram start.
So does Vejmelka get the next game, or was there enough from Ingram tonight where you can go with him again next game? And the flurry of goals there in the third period, they were all kind of the same thing, right? Lost the face-off, puck was in the net 3 times in a row.
Yeah, I didn't like the pressure around the net either. I thought we didn't have big enough asses in there to keep Ingram's vision clear, or to just kind of get the disruption out of the crease or around the crease. Seemed like there was a lot of noise after those face-offs, and it didn't seem like the right guys were in, or the right guys that were in weren't doing enough to kind of settle things down.
Yeah, we still don't quite have that, that bite and the pushback that is what a BA team looks like. So I think it is, it's coming with guys like Daniil Boot and some of the other players coming up. So it's not quite here yet. And I think Utah is one of the smaller teams in the league still, which has got to drive somebody like BA nuts. But yeah, you're looking for a little more pushback. And Lawson Krause is always a player who I'd love to see more from. He gets the hit totals, but they're not like crushing hits or anything like that, right? So that's a player who I'm looking for more from still. I don't know if he's too focused on hitting that 30 goal mark, but I think this is a big year for Lawson Krause.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought he had a really great first 2 periods. Again, not menacing by any means, but disrupted plays, got into the boards and broke up plays in the boards, and did a lot of the small things right. Unfortunately, I think he's kind of turning more into like a winger Bukestad, and Bukestad's great. Don't get me wrong, but he isn't known to have snarl, and he isn't known to really use his size in a punishing way like McCain does. So yeah, I'd like Krause to kind of wake up. I think we need to go tweet at him the PK Subban fight that he was in his rookie season or sophomore year. Just send him it, remind him it. If you live in Utah, go project it onto his house. I don't know. He needs to just remember that he's a mean SOB out there, and I just haven't seen enough of it lately.
No, and if he becomes a trade option next summer, if we don't see a lot of it, and this is 3 coaches now for Lawson Krause, right? He played under Dave Tippett, he played under Rick Tocchet, and now obviously he's under Andre Tourné, and maybe none of these coaches have been able to get that out of him yet.
But there's been moments. Yeah, I don't know.
Which is what makes it so frustrating with him.
I agree. But again, I think he's the exact type of player you're going to be wishing you still had on the roster come playoff time. Even if he doesn't always bring it physically, I think there's too many other elements to his game that are going to be important in the playoffs. You and I will be debating this for the next couple seasons, I think.
I'm looking at the Ottawa Senators, last place in the Atlantic Division, and Brady Tkachuk getting frustrated and asking out, and he becomes a trade option. That's a bit of a pipe dream right now, but I'm going to keep the hope alive. If
we got Brady Tkachuk, I probably would be awake for close to a week. just with pure excitement, just slowly unraveling in joy, though. And I don't know when I would come to. Maybe it would be after his first Hattie, after he goes and screams in front of Dostal or somebody and just breaks the Ducks, and then we would probably never lose the cup again. But yeah, no, I mean, if we manage to pull off, I'm wearing the IceCast, the Florida shirt right now. If we manage to pull off a trade like they did to get Matthew Tkachuk, we got Brady. Holy cow!
Friends with Keller too, right?
Yeah.
So if he's picking his spot on where he wants to go, maybe Utah is a possibility. This is what we can do after losses. We can dream up crazy trade scenarios. And I did have to show this one message here from Cleanheads Trent that I'm off the hook. I wasn't the curse in Salt Lake City. Maybe I was last week.
Well,
but maybe someone else is the new curse.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did get some goals, right? So
yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Three times what you saw.
Exactly. 4 times. But But yeah, sitting in the stands with under 5 minutes to go in that Colorado game, and I was thinking, flew all the way here. I don't know how many miles it is from Toronto to Salt Lake City, but flew all the way there, and I thought I was going to see 2 shutouts.
Yeah. Well, we definitely want to get more of a full recap from you and your week in Utah and SLC. So on the next true podcast episode, we'll definitely come prepared. Come with your notes.
Yeah, definitely.
You get your slideshow ready. The PowerPoint, we're going to have you take us through what it was like and every talking point that and piece of the travel. We want to see it all. So
everything from the games to the Crown Burger. I've looked, there's 7 Crown Burgers in Salt Lake City, but there's nothing here in Toronto. Nothing even similar from every restaurant I've been Googling. So I might have another trip for Utah just for that.
We'll have to hit up Matty Matheson and see if he can open one just for you.
Advertising opportunities still available.
Yeah. Andy H from Brisbane, Australia. Well, cheers. Thank you. Keep on supporting us from down under. We got a couple of you. Speaking of one of our favorite Aussies, Florence. Let's get into the trade conversation. I think the people are wanting it. We're old HF board members, and that's how we all met. And that place is a cesspool of terrible trade ideas. So we like what Dane said, and yeah, especially Montreal and Toronto. So if you guys are enjoying trade banter, we were born in it. We were born within it, and we didn't see the light until we got out of HF boards. But Schmaltz of the Habs manifested. Why does he even get a rotational A? We need real ice leadership core. Yeah, Flo, I think you brought up an interesting trade proposal around Savard, I believe it was, and Jack-Eye as a possible option.
Love both of those players.
Me too. And I do think a player like Savard, who, isn't going to totally razzle-dazzle you, is exactly kind of what this team needs. And I do think that's why there's a lot of kind of smoke around the Provorov piece. And again, that one really kind of feels like there may be something. But I did think it was interesting because that Pierre LeBron, the stream, podcast, whatever it was, segment, brought up the Canadians and Utah, how Canadians are looking for a little bit more firepower and how we're looking for defensemen. So,
and then on the weekend on Hockey Night in Canada, Elliot Friedman mentioned Montreal again, looking for a forward, but they mentioned a forward with bite, which we don't really have any of those to begin with. And that certainly wouldn't be Nick Schmaltz. So it's a bit of a round peg in a square hole, right? So,
yeah. Unless that's Doan.
You trading Josh Doan?
I'm not saying it, but I mean,
I don't even know.
So we got some clues. We know GMBA is not going to mortgage the future. He's already outright said it. And in fact, on our interview with Matt McConnell, if you have not checked it out, definitely give that a listen. That was preseason. He had some tidbits in there. And we asked him what his expectation was for the team. And, play-by-play guy, you're expecting him to be like, well, of course they're going to be making the playoffs. That's what we're hoping for. And he flat out said that the rebuild is not over, that Bill Armstrong is not going to be pushing for the playoffs yet, and that he is still kind of going to hoard some of the assets. So if that kind of goes into play and all the other rumors that BA is not necessarily going to mortgage the future for the short-term help, I don't think Josh Doan would be in that equation. And if Montreal's looking for a forward with snarl, maybe we're talking Krause, but man, the return's got to be better than probably anything they would want to give up.
Yeah, I don't really see a fit there for Krause in terms of, they could offer futures, but that's not too appealing for where we are right now. So
no,
and I don't think the franchise seems very high on Lawson Krause, and there's a lot of reasons to be. So I don't think he's being moved right now. I do think that, all this talk of Utah has so many draft picks. I think that's a little overstated because just looking at cap wages here, and they do have a mistake. It shows we have Toronto's second, but that was actually moved in, I believe, the Sergachev deal. It was moved in one of the draft day deals because I remember Bill Daly stepping up to the podium and saying the Toronto pick specifically. So we do still have our own pick, second round in 2025. But in terms of extra picks, we have or the Rangers and Ottawa's second round picks in 2026, and then the Rangers and Carolina's third round picks in 2025 and 2026. So and then Edmonton's fourth in 2027. So, I mean, that's 5 extra picks, which is nice, but it's not like this big depth of riches like it was at some point, because, we moved a pick in the Sergachev deal. We moved 2 for Marino. I think we moved some other picks recently too. So it's not quite what it used to be.
Yeah. No. And I get the idea that Armstrong probably wants to not completely empty the vault and be going into these drafts with the typical amount of picks per.
Yeah, I think if anything, if we're moving young talent, it's prospects we've already drafted, because you can only have 50 under contract, and at a point we're going to have too many. So if that's moving guys like Matika or Julian Lutz, I think would be, those tier of players who at some point, I mean, we're even seeing it in Utah as soon as next year, when you're going to have guys like Kobo Dwayne and TJ Ginla pushing for spots. Where does that leave players like Nick Schmaltz and Matthias Michelli, who are still signed through next year? But there's just so many forwards on this team that, maybe it comes to a point where you got to package up some for, help 3 guys for 1, something like that, to help out the rest of the roster.
Yeah. SLC Puck, what's up? How you doing, Austin? We love you.
You better be putting those clean hit stickers all over town. That was the deal.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And send some down to Zona. We'll get everybody becoming SLC Puck fans down here too. Yeah. But was activating Liam O'Brien a mistake? I don't know. He got in a fight. I think brought the energy. Yeah, I thought he kind of set the tone.
And I mean, if the only other option is Carcone, I don't think we lost this game because Michael Carcone didn't play.
Agreed. And nor do I think we lost it because Liam O'Brien was playing.
No.
There's a lot of fingers to point at during that kind of flurry at the end of the third, or about halfway through the third, 3/4 through the third. And I don't think O'Brien was necessarily the problem. And in fact, I would like to have him in the next game to maybe potentially set the tone again and really try to show the team, hey, we gotta get in the dubs again. We gotta get
it. And I mean, there's not many other options at this point, right? It's just Carcone. Josh Stone has gone to Tucson, so is Yamamoto. So it's either O'Brien or Carcone for that spot there. Assuming I don't think anyone else would come out of the lineup, so both could play. I don't know who would be. I don't think Stemlin had a great game by any stretch tonight, but I don't think he's coming out of the lineup.
No, absolutely not. Especially the way he's becoming a utility player for the faceoffs. I loved send him out there, win the faceoff, pull him right off the ice. Tampa's doing that with Nick Paul on the top power play unit, which is just like completely padding his points. I think he's had 2 or 3 power play points now in the past like 5 or 6 games, and it's been from taking the draw and getting the play going.
It's a great technique, but you got to win the faceoff. Otherwise, you got Kevin Stenlund stuck out there for 20 seconds of your power play, and it's just it's not a power play when Kevin Stenlund is on the ice.
No, and they've mostly done it. And in this case, it was the beginning of overtime, and then I saw it during the empty net against LA, which is a little less egregious. And
Trent is all aboard the Michael Misa train here.
Yeah, Trent. So Trent hopefully will be releasing his next part of the prospect primer soon here, and then I guess at this point we need to start putting you on the homework assignment of scouting on that top 5 or so. If this keeps on going on, I don't know. We've seen this before with this team, even in the Coyotes' years of having rough starts, especially. This is a team that's historically done really well kind of in February and March. In fact, in 2012, during the big conference finals run, that was the year I don't think they lost a game in February. But more recent years outside of last year, where they had that dreaded February where they lost every single game, the exact opposite of 2012. They've done well kind of in the later parts of the season. Sometimes I've always felt that was just teams not taking them too seriously by then, or they're kind of locked into playoff spots, so they don't care as much. But other times I think it was maybe 2 seasons ago when Schmaltz had like the 7-point game against Ottawa, and all this team could do was score and win games out of nowhere. And
that was like the start of this season, right? 5 and 6 goals every game. But even since the start of the season, the goals against has been way too high. We're letting in like
that's
4
the
a
scary
game,
part to me.
and yeah, we finally get a game, 2 periods at least, to Connor Ingram, where he in the preseason he was talking about he is a successful goalie when he's a boring goalie, right? He's square to the puck, he's cutting down angles, he's not flopping all over the place, and that's what we saw through 2 periods tonight. And I mean, even in the goals he let in late, I think there might have been some deflections in there, and they were off of lost faceoffs and stuff like that, but like the pucks weren't going in because he was flopping all over the place and that sort of thing. But just very disappointed to throw away a very good 2 periods from Connor Ingram. His best game of the year up until the 3rd period.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I still think he was really good in the Rangers game too, despite the score.
Mm-hmm.
Just different caliber team, different caliber of high danger chances. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, in the Boston game.
That one,
but he didn't have as many. You know what? And he didn't have to deal with too many high danger chances. And I didn't watch that full game either. But it seemed like.
So does he go next game? Because I don't think we have any back-to-backs until the end of November. So we do have some nice flexibility there in terms of the goaltending. So we have, looking at the schedule here, we have Calgary on Wednesday, and then that's the last game for October. And then they have Vegas on Saturday, and then they got a 4-day. They got Calgary at home, and then they're on the road for 4. And it's not going to be easy. They got Vegas, then they got Winnipeg, then they got St. Louis, then they got Nashville. And I know Nashville's kind of beginning to turn it around too. So this is a tough November, because then they got Carolina and Vegas, Washington, Boston, Pittsburgh, Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Vegas.
Yeah, this is going to be a test. Okay.
So Bill Armstrong has to address this defense.
Yes, I agree.
Already.
How many games has it been since the Jersey got injured during the
Jersey game? That was the 4th game of the year. So
Anaheim, Boston, Ottawa, Colorado, LA. Nice. 6 games.
They won 1
6
of
games
those.
Now.
1 win and
we
6.
won 1.
Yeah. Forget about the bonus points in Anaheim and San Jose, but 1 win out of 6. And I think the power play is how they do on the power play tonight, because coming into tonight without Dursey was only at like 5%. And I mean, when Dursey was playing, it was 45-ish, and they're not going to be scoring at that sort of rate, because I mean, that's just some early season success in a very short time frame, but they're really getting burned by not having any defensemen who can move the puck up the ice. So,
yeah, I
mean, I've been beating the drum for Timothy Liljegren because I think he can be a short-term option there. And we've seen, like, they've tried Valimaki and it's not working. So he's scratched. But I think they got to address this defense, because this schedule is just going to get harder. And I mean, it looked like they were kind of getting away with one tonight with San Jose, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, and again, I mean, how great do you feel if the win is against San Jose? I mean, it doesn't really prove that much,
right?
There's definitely some interesting ideas on the trade front. I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of the idea of Provorov. There's so many components that I like.
But can he quarterback a power play?
We don't need him to.
I would like to bring in 2 guys. I bring in both Provorov and Liljegren, and then I think Kolyachonok's just done okay. I think
and his minutes reflect that.
I don't think he would get claimed on waivers. I think every team has a Vladislav Kolyachonok floating around. So
yeah, and if he does, it's not the end of the world anymore, because you just added Liljegren and Provorov, and granted Provorov's contract to be expiring, but if they wanted to re-sign him for maybe
you could just waive Bertuzzo as well, and you don't even have to send him to Tucson. You can waive him and he can just hang around for 30 days, and then he can do it again. So I mean, they're not gonna. It's not like it would be an embarrassment for him to be sent to Tucson, but that's obviously not what he signed up for, right? So if you can bring in 2 defensemen, and then I don't know, does Valimaki get out of the doghouse and get into the lineup next game?
Man, I
I got to think there's going to be at least some roster change after that. It's got to be. You can't.
Yeah, I think you pulled Coley out and play Valimaki.
And even then, like switching out your bottom pair D and going up against one of the better teams in the league so far in Calgary. I'm also kind of curious if we see the goaltending change. I didn't think Connor Ingram was good for 2 periods tonight, but at the same time, they got to get Vejmelka another game here at some point. He's only had 2 starts, right? He had the New Jersey game, which was a bit of a sleeper, and then he had what was his other game? I know he came in relief in Ottawa. Did he get another? He got the Colorado.
Started in Colorado,
yeah, which was a disaster. But it wasn't like he's had. And I'm not the biggest Vejmelka fan, but he had a bit of the sleeper game in New Jersey, which was a bit of a trap. And then everyone looked bad in the Colorado game. So
yeah,
not that he looked great, but at the same time, it's been a tough go for him. He's not getting a lot of support. He was good in the second and third period in the Ottawa game when he stepped in. He stopped all 14 shots. So. The chat here seems to like Arbor Jacki Wi-Fi.
Jacki is a fighter.
He is. He's a little dirty, but that's fine because we don't really. Not that we need to bring in a dirty player, but we still don't really have the level of intimidation I would like, and I think that Bill Armstrong would like as well.
Agreed. I do think that. I know GMBA does not like to be pushed into a corner, but last week doing the not so clean hits post game, I was kind of saying that there's still time, and 2 of those games are gone now. We don't have a win in them. It sure doesn't feel like there's going to be too much more time to figure this out before.
Yeah, don't throw away this season to save a 2nd or 3rd round pick. No. Even like Provorov, if it costs you a 2nd round pick,
that's fine.
And you fall out of the race by March, you can trade him and get a 2nd round pick back. It might not be as high of a pick. Like it might be whatever, 10 or something slots less, but this is an important year to make some progress. So don't throw it all away to save a draft pick. I'm not saying trade our 1st round pick. I mean, that's totally off limits. And so are the top prospects, Tej and Cole Baudouin and some of the other guys, but we do have some level of assets to course correct this thing before it really goes into the ditch.
Yeah. And the problem is Columbus just spanked Edmonton. So at what point here are they okay with moving Provorov? I think with new management, they have to understand realistically where this team is at, and no matter what ownership believes or says, there's no possible way they can actually have expectations making the playoffs, right?
But there was a defenseman who was not in the lineup tonight for Columbus, and it's the drum that Trent has been beating since probably since his draft year, and it's David Ursak, bringing him in. And there was a report the other day from Saravelli that Bill Armstrong has a bit of a reputation when he's having these trade discussions. He really likes to go for the fruit high on the tree. He likes to go for the young players and the top prospects, and usually that doesn't lead to productive conversations. But at the same time, it has planted some seeds in the past where when he asked for Sergachev, I guess quite some time ago, and Tampa wasn't going to do it then, but it eventually led to the deal down the road. But we've heard in the past where he asked for Alex Newhook when he was a top prospect with Colorado in the Darcy Kemper trade. He asked for, there was another big name he asked for. I can't remember who it was, but has not been shy in asking for high picks. I guess Spencer Knight in Florida with Chikrin, he asked for
Demko. You could say the same thing then.
Thatcher Demko. He asked for 2 first-round picks from Pittsburgh down the road, and because they were after Jacob Chikrin. So those would have been huge because I think it was Pittsburgh's like 27 and 28 or 28 and 29 first-round picks.
Could you imagine?
That would, because that team was, look where they are in the standings now, and it's not going to get any better.
Bettman would have found some way to veto it and give the first-round pick back to Pittsburgh when they win McKenna next season.
Well, he would have found a way to give it to Chicago.
No, he'll save Pittsburgh too. He would have divided the first into 2 and let Pittsburgh draft McKenna, and then Chicago gets whoever the number 2 is that year, and then give us a couple later thirds to make up for that.
So, we keep hearing all this that Bill Armstrong is hung up and bringing in guys with term, but I mean, obviously with David Urasek, that's not a concern. He's a young player, and you can fit him in. It's not a term issue with him. I don't think we want to bring in anyone, super long term. But I am a little surprised that even like any term seems to be a concern. Like even a guy with a 1-year deal. Timothy Liljegren is signed for 1 more year, so maybe he's not even an option. So maybe that does make somebody like Ivan Provorov, who is a pending unrestricted free agent, maybe that brings his name to the top of the list.
Yeah. I feel like I keep on trying to type in cap friendly here, and I just kind of want to go through every team's blue line and see who has only.
Yeah. Especially trying to bring in a right shot defenseman, a top 4 right shot who can move the puck. You're going to have to find somebody who is underutilized. Earlier today, I was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast. Elliot Friedman was mentioning from San Jose, actually. I got to look up his name because it's escaping me at the moment. He was in the lineup tonight for San Jose. Matt Benning, but he has 1 year of term left. He's somebody he's a right shot. He can move the puck, but I mean, he's not the big name, but at the same time, that's kind of a player who it looks like you would need to bring in, just based on what's going to be available, or even like a player like a Pierre-Olivier Joseph, somebody who can work the power play. Like Victor Soderstrom would have been perfect right now, but he went home to Sweden. So, but I mean, that's probably the caliber of player that would be movable at this point, because nobody's going to be moving a typical top 4 right shot power play quarterback without some outrageous costs at this point of the season, because everybody thinks they still have a chance at the playoffs at this point. Maybe not San Jose, but aside from that, every team is still in the mix.
Yeah. I mean, even unfortunately, teams like St. Louis are winning games, and obviously Detroit has playoff aspirations, and I kind of go up and down this list. Now, here's an interesting one with Duclair out. Wonder if the Islanders would be tempted by somebody like Michelli or Schmaltz. Nashville just lost in overtime. Or did they win that? No, they lost. I wonder if they feel like they need a little bit more skill up front.
Islanders
or Nashville?
We do have some trade history with the Islanders, right? The Andrew Ladd deal. So there's some trade history there between Bill Armstrong and Lou Lamoriello, and I think they go back they go back together as well. So there is some history there between those two. But so that helps, because you see GMs tend to make deals with the same group over and over because there is that rapport built up. So are you thinking like a player like Romanov?
That'd be interesting. Now, would Islanders be okay with that, knowing that they had just moved a first-round pick for him?
I mean, they just gave 7 years to the guy who was on the Leafs, and then threw him on waivers. So, I mean, maybe Lou's going out with a blaze of glory. He's in his 80s now.
I know.
And Romanov, you don't get the term there, right? Because he's a restricted free agent. He is a left shot, but
at this point, I mean, we need anything, and
exactly.
This is what, and a team like the Islanders is going to want a defenseman back. So that in this situation, pretty much any team is going to want some sort of defenseman back. So in my mind, it's you are upgrading a Valimaki, or you are upgrading send Kolyachonok over to do it.
I mean, as we talked about in the Clean Hits group chat earlier today, we wondered if Juuso Valimaki could be a piece in one of these deals, because anytime you move a defenseman, you want one back, just because look at any season, you need 10 defensemen
teams
on. Yeah, exactly. You need 10 defenseman depth, because they get hurt, they're blocking shots, they're crashing the corners. It's just a very physically demanding position, and I mean, look how many Utah's already used this year. I think we're 8 or 9 defensemen deep, and it's not even out of the first month.
Yep.
We use Sergachev, Dursey, Cole, Valimaki, Kesselring, Lamoureux, Kolyachonok for 2. That's 8. Haven't used Marino at all. That's 9. And beyond that, we had called up Patrick Koch, but beyond that, like there's nothing left in Tucson to call up. I mean, Max Zuber, Artem Duda are promising pieces, but they're not going to get us out of this hole. And I know I've seen some people floating the name Kevin Connaughton, but he hasn't played he's I mean, maybe 5 years ago, but I mean, he's not going to solve this problem either.
Yeah, no, I mean, Connaughton was our Valimaki 5 years ago.
Exactly.
He could score.
Yeah, and I mean, we can hope and prayer that something's going to come across the waiver wire, like how we got Valimaki in the first place, but the type of defenseman we need is just not going to fall into our laps.
All the viewers in the chat right now, this is what our group text looks like, with just Trent blowing it up constantly, by the way. So you're feeling like...
Who has a history of calling trades, so maybe we can manifest one here.
I think there should be some sort of Hall of Fame section in the Discord where we can just post all of Trent's predictions that went right. I'm pretty sure he got the OEL trade
and right down
almost
to the details.
Down to a T. Yeah.
Vadim Barbata from Tampa to Arizona.
There was a
signing
forward from Toronto who was like such a mid third, fourth liner center.
Nick Ritchie?
No, this was before that.
Oh, Matt Lombardi?
There you go.
Yeah.
He called that one before
even
it happened.
Signing I can't remember his name. The guy from Pittsburgh, the fourth line center, who Vitale. What's his first name? Joe Vitale.
Oh,
signing him.
Joe Vitale,
like the most obscure free agent.
Yeah.
And he ends up in Arizona.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, yeah. I think we will have some sort of deal in the next 2 weeks. And I think our homework as Clean Hit should be trying to get this.
We're coming up to two key dates here as well, because November 1st, I think it's 3/4 of the team who are in playoff spots as of November 1st end up making the playoffs. And then there's also the Elliot Friedman thing, which is American Thanksgiving, which is November 20-ish, something around then. You guys had the Thanksgiving in the wrong month.
Nanzona.
Like the overwhelming number of teams since the cap era in 2005-06 and forward, if you're not in a playoff position as of American Thanksgiving, it's remote possibility that you're going to make it, which is wild considering there's still 60, 65 games left at that point. But it's so hard to move up in the standings, right? With some games worth 2 points and others worth 3 points.
Yeah. And Thanksgiving's late this year. It's the 28th, so it's pretty much all in November. I always figured that stat had a lot to do with the caliber of teams. So St. Louis being dead last into January and then winning the Cup was probably one of the most extreme outliers we probably will ever see. Yeah, Edmonton last season being near the bottom. I think they may have been in second or third to last position around Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving.
So you're saying this is all strategy by Utah?
No, I wish.
Gonna throw off the competition. They're all gonna play down to us, and then we're gonna shoot right up the standings.
Maybe. Unfortunately, that generally happens in March. So,
looking at the standings here again, 10 games, 29 goals scored. So not bad, a little low, but 37 against, which is just nuts. You look at a cup contender like Dallas, and I mean, we're not Dallas, but and the Dallas has played one fewer game, but through 9 games, they've let in 17 goals. That's less than 2 a game.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's the lowest in the whole league. It's got to be.
It has to be. I know Ottinger's like near the top of
16 for the Rangers, 16 for Carolina. So Carolina is, I believe, the lowest, 16 in 7 games, which is pretty crazy because, a lot of people thought Carolina had goaltending issues. They lost Frederik Andersen today. The Rangers are 2 goals against a game, which is, hey, this feeds into our conversation earlier this year about bringing in a top tier franchise level goalie. And I still have a lot of, I've got a lot of time for Connor Ingram, but I don't know if he's somebody you can win a Stanley Cup with.
No, you need, if you're going to win a cup with a rando goaltender, it needs to be somebody that comes in way late and nobody knows anything about, like Matt Murray just coming out of nowhere, or Aiden Hill,
Tim Thomas. You can do it. I just think to like
Bennington.
Chris Osgood back in the day, or even like a Corey Crawford, who I wouldn't consider like a all-star goalie. But if you can stack your defense with like a Duncan Keith and a Brent Seabrook and a Nick Hjalmarsson, then okay, you can kind of cut some corners with the goaltending. But we're certainly not there on our defense, and definitely not right now, considering that even with like if we had Dursey and Marino and whatever, we'd still need a top-level goalie, especially like we're in the is the Central Division the most difficult division in the NHL? Maybe the Atlantic, but with your Ice Cats there, but
sure.
It's not the Pacific, and it's probably not the Metro with Columbus and Philadelphia at the bottom of it. So,
and Pittsburgh.
Exactly. So can we just be in one of those divisions and just load up on the points from the bottom feeders?
I guess, yeah, that'd be great. But
no, we just got to play Winnipeg and Colorado and Dallas and all these other teams multiple times a year.
And yeah, unfortunately, Minnesota's playing well. So
exactly.
But season's still young. Lots of time. Lots and lots of time.
So I mean, this kind of took a bit of a negative spin, and it probably should have, considering the last 20 minutes of that game. But at the same time, there's still 72 games left. The team is 500. If you look at it thinking, going into the year, the expectation was to be playing competitive games down the stretch and compete for a playoff spot. So to get into the playoffs, you probably need 90 points, give or take a point or two. I think we saw some teams like Washington got in last year with a very low point total, but generally it's around that number. So right now they would be on pace for 82 points, which would fall short probably 6, 7, 8, 9 points in the playoff spot, which isn't great. But I mean, had they won tonight, then that is a little bit higher. But they do have their work cut out for them here in trying to get back some of these points that they threw away at least, 1 point tonight. And then if they played 50 of 60 minutes, great against Ottawa, which would have been 2 points had they won that game. I don't know. Maybe it's just balancing out where they kind of stole the Islander game. And maybe you can make a case for the Rangers or the Boston game. So, just some frustrating point losses for sure.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. Well, again, I am hoping this is a big wake-up call for the team, and we start to see a spark. We start to see things go our way. We see a little bit more puck luck. Goaltending needs to really sharpen up, but also the blue line does too. And I think a big bounce back against Calgary is just what the doctor would order. And man, if they can string that together with a win against Vegas, that would be a hell of a way to start moving this thing in the right direction.
I think you're also going to see Calgary play Dan Vladar against Utah next game, that's when I really knew the Coyotes sucked a couple of years ago when every team was putting in their backup goalie. I'm not saying at all that Utah sucks, but I think that's Calgary's going to look at that game where they can give Dustin Wolf a bit of a break. And
I thought Vladar started tonight, though.
I'm not sure.
I'm fine with the young goaltender too, though.
That's
in this situation. This is in a lot of ways I would almost prefer taking the young one, because it could be one of those things where they come out flying because of what's gone down.
I would hope so.
5-0 Vegas against Calgary, by the way. The game ended 38 shots to 16. I think we are starting to see
the wheels come off in Calgary.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Vladar did start.
So Calgary is also going to come into this next game very agitated as well.
Sure, but you could have said that about Utah the past 3 games.
Yeah, that's fair. But maybe Bill Armstrong will shock the world again, as he said with the Sergachev trade, and bring in some kind of relief for this decor, because it very much needs it. Like, how many? I'm just going to double check here again. How many minutes did Sergachev get tonight? Because that's the other thing. If you don't bring in some defensemen, you're gonna, even if you get to a playoff spot, get to April, and Sergachev's gonna have no gas. He played 26-35.
Yeah.
And it's especially tough because you're really trying to, Maverick Lamoureux has looked pretty good, but you can't really load him up too much. And then you got Robert Bertuzzo, who was kind of hot and cold tonight, but the feet aren't there. And he only 13 minutes for him. And Vlad Kolyachonok
he
can't
was
play
at
a ton
12.
either. So I thought, like I said earlier in the pod, Ian Cole had a great game, or a great 40 minutes at least.
Yeah, he did.
And but at the same time, like even Michael Kesselring getting 23 minutes is just wild.
It's too much. It's too much. I'd like to go back and look at those goals and see where Kesselring is during them.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was in the. Did they get on the power play? No, I thought they get. Oh, I guess the overtime winner was power play.
Yes. Well, big couple games here. I think it's going to set the tone of how quickly something happens. I have to imagine BA's seen enough and knows he needs to do something. And even if this team continues to lose, I think he needs to do something so it's not what Anaheim went through last season, because it just can't happen.
No.
You're making big strides to get out of the bottom. First year in Utah, there's expectations to at least be exciting and be pushing till the end. And so it shall be interesting, and we are definitely going to be pumping out a lot of content on some of the speculation and what we hear and what we can dig up. So definitely keep your eyes on all things Clean Hits. Definitely be following us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And then, of course, you can join us in our Discord, where you can talk to a whole bunch of Cult of GMBA members and join us on game day threads. And it's been a lot of fun in there. So definitely give us a follow. Corey, anything else you want to say about the game?
We just got to get this defense sorted out. I mean, I don't think
Yes,
it can be entirely to blame for tonight's loss, but I think it's only one win, I want to say, since Jersey went down in the fourth game of the year. We just got to stop the bleeding. Got to find someone who can move the puck up the ice. The power play is almost like 0% since Jersey went out, which is just nuts. So really shows his value to this team. But yeah, got to get that sorted out. And it would be amazing if it happened before the next game. I think that's a bit of a tight timeline since the game is on Wednesday, but get someone from an American team so Aaron has a work visa and he can jump right in.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be an interesting week. I think this will be a tone setter. Then the tone has already began. Let's see if they can flip the script on it and start turning things around. All right. Well, we will catch you later this week. I'm sure we'll have a new podcast episode coming out. We got some great articles. Again, we got that new prospect premiere going on right now. The primer, that Trent is working on. I think we're going to have some trade speculation pieces. I think one of us is going to be writing about why Provorov would be a very good fit. I think either Kenny or I are going to take that one on pretty soon here. But make sure you're subscribed to our blog at cleanhitshockey.com. You know what? You can still get it at the inaugural price, even though it's supposed to move up. I was totally slammed with work today, so I couldn't even get in there and change the pricing. So don't sleep on that. You may be able to get it, sneak one more in before that pricing goes up.
Don't sleep on that. Like Utah just slept through that third period.
Exactly. Yep. Take advantage of it. Don't drop the ball on that one and go lose a game that you're up 4-1 on. But yeah, Calgary on to Wednesday.
Yep.
All right. Well, have a good one, everybody, and we'll catch you later.
See Utah later.